Welcome and good afternoon. This is Commish Orr, and today we're going to take a look at Payoff Pitch, my Payoff Pitch League. More specifically, if you haven't already seen, and I'm assuming you have if you're on this video, but maybe not, there was just released recently, within the last few weeks, a Legends and Bust set number 2 for Payoff Pitch. Now, Legends and Bust set number 1 was released a while ago. I can't remember exactly when, but now they have Legends and Bust set number 2. And actually, if I get over to my PDF seasons and go here, this will tell me. So about a year ago, I guess. Doesn't seem like it's been that long, but it's been a year. The end of August of 24, Legends and Bust, the original Legends and Bust set was released. And now they have just released earlier in August of this year, Legends of Bust Set 2. In the middle of those two, a few months after Set 1 was released, they had the Negro League Stars Set also released. So this is great. This is great stuff. Very, 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 very cool stuff. And I thought I'd talk about it a little bit today. Now, Kurt Berglund has done a more thorough walkthrough of all the players in Set 2. He's kind of flipped through the cards. So you can kind of see who's there. You can actually go online and find out who the players are in the cards. There's a great somebody on Facebook. I think it's on Facebook. Maybe it's on the forums. Has compiled a CSV list of all the players in sets 1 and 2, and so I've kind of taken that, by the way, and modified it a little bit. I changed the column that just had the names to 2 columns so I could sort by last name. But it specifies what set they're in and whether they're a batter or a pitcher. There's some other things because it was really done with the intention of creating regional teams, but I don't really need the regional stuff. So I can't remember exactly who put this together, but big props to the person who did it. I've just modified it a little bit so that I can search and that kind of thing and find players easily. But here's what the set is good for. It's not going to be good for those of you who play season replays. So if you're playing the 1973 season, the Legends Bust set isn't going to really do anything for you, or the Negro League set or whatever. However, if you are like me, I don't really play season replays. I play either best of or various projects like that. And in those cases, these sets are like the bread and butter of what I want to use for my leagues or my replays. And so, just as a refresher, if you're new here, I have a Payoff Pitch project going on right now. It's in season 2. And what it is 4 teams in each league, 4 American, 4 National League teams. 3 of those teams are made up of Hall of Famers, so players that have been elected to the Hall of Fame. And then 1 team in each league is made up of great players that are not in the Hall of Fame. So these are players like, let's say, Pete Rose or Barry Bonds or Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, players that are great players statistically, but for whatever reason, they are not in the Hall of Fame. Now, it could be that they're not in the Hall of Fame because they just retired. So some recently retired players are eligible to be in the league and that kind of thing. And I started this a couple of years ago with the original Payoff Pitch sets. And there weren't any Legends and Bust sets at that time. And so I was really limited in picking individual season cards from players and trying to get the best season that was available in Payoff Pitch. Well, some of the older guys, there are fewer seasons available, so the cards I was forced to use for them are not necessarily a good representation of their careers, because I had to pick a season because that's the only season that was carded for that player, and that season wasn't necessarily the greatest. So the Legends and Bust sets, on the other hand, are based more on the career of the players involved, and they include most of the Hall of Famers. more of the Hall of Famers than are included in the individual card sets. Because as I said, I think there's 1921 and 1933, and then 1940, I think, are the three earliest card sets. There's an 1889 also, but so some of those older guys like Tris Speaker, let's say, or Christy Mathewson, you know, don't really overlap those years very well. So either they weren't in my league at all, or I was forced to use a season that wasn't necessarily their best season. So when the Legends of Bust came out, I was excited because it allowed me to then use some of these players who are well-known Hall of Famers who hadn't been in the league yet. By the way, you can head over to baseballmaelstrom.com to follow the action on all of my projects. So today, with the release of the Legends of Bust Set 2, which further fills out not just Hall of Famers but other great players, I thought I would go through and reevaluate the players that are in the league and who's not in the league that should be, based on who is out there. And for those, I did a whole video on how I set up my league. But I imagine that video was so long ago that you may not even know that it exists. So what I did to kind of come up with the rosters or the players involved was I started with this JAWS rating. JAWS is the Jaffe War score system, wins above replacement score system. So it takes a player's career wins above replacement and averages it with their 7-year peak wins above replacement, so that you get kind of a good representation of how good a player's career was, because it not only mixes their career but also their peak years, to reward players that had a higher peak and maybe had years of their career that kind of drug them down a little bit. So you can find this on baseballreference.com. You can search for JAWS, and then you can go position by position. And if you highlight a column, like JAWS in this case, it will sort players by that category. And then I just went through, and you'll notice it notes which ones are Hall of Famers. So those guys are going to be on the Hall of Fame team, or eligible to be on the Hall of Fame teams. And then you'll note like Thurman Munson, Gene Tennis, Buster Posey are the top 3 catchers that are not in the Hall of Fame. And those guys like that would be eligible for the non-Hall of Fame teams that in my league. So that's kind of how I did things. And coincidentally enough, there were enough players, Hall of Famers, to fill 6 teams, 3 American League and 3 National League teams, with a starter and a backup at each position. It's very weird that it worked out that way, but it worked out that way. It just so happened that they were fairly evenly split between American League and National League. And for those, I originally went by whatever season I was using for that player. Were they an American League or National League player for that season that I was using? With the Legends of Bust set, I'm going more based on where were they for a majority of their career, or where were they great for a majority of their career. Was it an American League team or American League teams or National League teams? Most players that you come across are pretty clear cut, and they only played in either the American League or National League separately, and so they're very easy to determine. There's only a handful of players that are fairly evenly split between the 2 leagues, that there's a determination that needs to be made. In any event, most of the players in my league are still using individual season cards, but I wanted to round them out with players from the Legends of Bust set. So what I've done, that's kind of the setup of all this. So what I've done is I've gone through each position. Each position is a column here, and I started with the top 16 with that JAWS rating at each position, and I've color coded this. So the color coded in red here are players in the National League. Blue are players in the American League. Light red are non-Hall of Fame players, and light blue are not are light red and light blue are non-Hall of Fame players, either American or National League. And if they're colored in either blue or red, they're already in my league. They're already in my league. So that leaves a couple of other colors that you'll note. Gold. Gold means they're not in my league, but they are Hall of Famers. And then clear means they're not in my league and they're not Hall of Famers. And lastly, gray means they're not eligible to be in the league because they're still current players. So let's take a minute to note this. The players in gray are still playing and are already in the top 16 players at that position all time in JAWS rating. Pretty crazy. You have people like Goldschmidt. He's about 14th, roughly, give or take, at first base, and he's still playing. Robinson Cano is a little bit different. He is not playing in the major leagues. I think he's playing in the Mexican League, but he hasn't officially retired. So in my case, he's still not eligible because he's not retired. Who else? Mike Trout, of course. Big name here. Mike Trout is already the number 6 center fielder. Mookie Betts is already the number 4 right fielder, roughly, give or take. Because some of the player positions I'm using them at a different position than their primary, but number 4. And Aaron Judge, of course, is on that list too. So those players are still playing, not eligible to be in my league. So that's why I kind of grade them out. But you can see what we really want to focus on are the golds and the whites, if you will. The golds and the whites. Because golds means they're in the Hall of Fame. And they're in the top 16 in JAWS rating. And then white means they're not in the Hall of Fame, but they're in the top 16 or so in JAWS rating. So what I need to do is go position by position and see if there's any glaring people that are not in my league that should be. And again, let's take a look at Honus Wagner. Honus Wagner is the number 1 shortstop in JAWS rating. But he was not in my league because he wasn't carded originally in Payoff Pitch. However, he is carded now because he's in the Legends and Bust set. So if we look up Honus Wagner, we can see he's in set. Yeah, he's in set 2 that just came out. And so for sure, Legends and Bust set 2. Oops. There's his card. So for sure, I want to put him in the league because he's the number 1 rated shortstop of all time. So that's kind of gives you the foundation of what I'm trying to do here. And if we look, we can see also, again, a lot of these gold players that are high on the list are players who were in the Hall of Fame, obviously, but they're old timers, so that they weren't really they either weren't carded at all, or they're carded but it wasn't for a very good season, so they weren't in my league. But I think I need to add some of these guys. Bill Dickey was carded. He was carded, but the year he was carded for wasn't very good. And I bet you if we go to, let's just take a look at Bill Dickey. Bill Dickey, Yankees catcher, longtime Yankees catcher in the 20s and from 1928 to 1946. Okay, So Bill Dickey was carded for 1933, I believe. So as you can see, 1933, still a pretty good year. 318 hitter, 381 on base, 490 slugging. And actually, in his case, I don't think the Hall of Fame card's probably going to be much better than that. Or the Legends Bust card isn't probably going to be much better than that. Let's take a look. Is he in here? Yep, there he is. Yeah, see, his Legends and Bust card isn't going to be very much better than that because that season, 1933, is almost the same as his averages, his career averages. It's too bad that there wasn't a 1937, because then I would have used the 1937 card because that was like his peak year. So as you can see, I had to use the 1933 because that's all that was available between 1933 and 1940. But in his case, his career average is about the same as in 1933, so I don't think it's going to improve that card at all. So his, I probably will not need to bring into the league. By the way, this is a big spreadsheet for every project that has the teams and everything on it. And he's an AL guy, which means he would be with these dark blue colors. And he's only quote-unquote better in JAWS rating than one of the dark blue colors of the Hall of Famers, and that's Mickey Cochran. And so he's probably not going to be in the league because that's a negligible difference. In fact, I believe he was in season 1 of my league, but got replaced when Josh Gibson came in. So that's the other thing I should note. I also wanted each team to have at least one Negro League representative. So every team had to have at least one Negro League representative, and Josh Gibson. So when Josh Gibson came in the Negro League set last year, I added a bunch of these Negro League guys in here. Prior to that, the 1921 card set had Negro Leaguers in it, but not a large assortment. So when the Negro League set came out for Payoff Pitch, I added some of these, like Josh Gibson in and guys like that. The other thing I'll note, talking back about, this video is kind of all over the place, and I apologize for that, but the other thing to note about Legends of Bust Set 2 is it also includes not just Major League Baseball players, but it also includes the Japanese League players. So not only do you get the great players or legends of the past, but you also get players like Sadaharu Oh, of course, and some of the other great Japanese League players. Now, those guys aren't incorporated into my league yet. I'd have to actually look and see how many there were, and maybe in season 3 I'll add in one Japanese League player per team or something like that. But for the time being, I'm not going to do that. But that just gives you an idea. So yeah, that's the kind of question that I have to go. Same with Buck Ewing here. Hall of Famer, National League. And actually, he could take the place of Ernie Lombardi. Probably will. If he's carded. Let's take a look and see if he is carded in the Legends of Bust set. So, oh, so it won't even matter because he's not carded. And I'm assuming that the spreadsheet's pretty accurate. So let's just take a look. No, he's not carded in either of the Legends or Bust sets. Let's take a look at his baseball reference page. It's probably no. Oh, that's why. Because he's an old time guy from the 1880s. So he's probably in the 1889 set. So I guess I could have used him from the 1889 set. I'll just bring that set up. By the way, I have almost every season in PDF. There he is. Buck Ewing, 327, 383, 477. So he could, I could bring him in place of Ernie Lombardi because Lombardi isn't, he's the lowest ranked NL Hall of Famer. So I may switch them out. What's really going to be interesting is the first base. First base, because you have Cap Anson. You have Cap Anson. Cap Anson, there he is. He's in set 2. So we have set him in set 2. You have Connor, Roger Connor, I believe. Is he in there? Roger Connor, set 2. See, set 2, set 1 was great. Filled in a lot of Hall of Fame gaps, but then some of the old time guys were still not included. So I'm glad there's a set 2 because that's where some of these other guys like Cap Anson, Honus Wagner, Roger Connor. Let's see. Let's take a look at is it Browthers? Some of these old time guys, you don't know how to pronounce their name. I'm Dan Browthers. See, he's another guy. He's another old time guy. He would be in the 1889 set, so possibly I could bring him in. But the NL would take the place of the dark red. So like Gil Hodges and Orlando Cepeda are probably the 2 lowest ranked Hall of Fame National League first basemen. But even in that case, maybe Todd Helton. So Cap Anson and Roger Connor are probably going to join the league just because they're better than Cepeda and Hodges down here with set 2. Likewise, if we look at like Jim Thome, American League, probably not because the Mule Suttles is a Negro League guy, so he's not going to be replaced. The Dick Allen would be the other American League guy he could replace, but Dick Allen is like leading the league in home runs right now. So I'm not going to bring him in to replace the league leader in home runs. But maybe in season 3, I'll bring him in. But other than that, there's nobody else he's better than. So Thome may be out. But my guess is Cap Anson and Roger Connor, at the very least, will come in. At second base, it's more clear cut. It's more clear cut. Starting from the bottom, Willie Randolph is not going to make it in because American League non-Hall of Famer Lou Whitaker and Bobby Grich are both higher than him on the list, so he's not gonna make it in. Biggio could make it in because he's NL Hall of Famer, and currently Mazeroski is in there, so he probably will at least replace Mazeroski. Chase Utley probably will make it in because he's better than either Jeff Kent or Lonnie Fry. So probably Chase Utley will make it in. And then number 3, of course, I have to bring him in. I think it's LeShui, right? It's one of those weird spellings that I think a lot of people mispronounce, but I believe it's pronounced LeShui. So he'll probably make it in as an AL Hall of Famer because he's better than Nellie Fox, Bobby Doerr, Joe Gordon, Roberto Alomar. He's better than almost all of the other AL Hall of Fame players. So he's gonna make it into the league, I'm sure. Third base, let's see, home run Baker's down here. Possibly he could make it in, but more likely, let's see, Scott Rowland, I think, was already in my league once, but as an NL Hall of Famer, the only person he's higher than is um, Tony Perez. So maybe he would take Tony Perez's spot. And Edgar Martinez, the only player he's higher than is Harmon Killebrew. So maybe he would take Killebrew's spot. And then home run Baker would just get left out. So that's what we're looking at third base. Shortstop, of course, Honus Wagner has to come in. And he's in set 2 also. So a lot of these guys are in set 2 because they're the older players. So Honus Wagner would probably take the place of, well, Willie Wells is a Negro League guy. Dave Bancroft. So Dave Bancroft would probably get knocked out by Honus Wagner. Then we have George Davis and Ernie Banks. And Ernie Banks, the only reason he's not in already is, I wonder if you can guess. Is because Ernie Banks, the only season available is 1954, and Ernie Banks' 1954 season. Let's look at Ernie Banks. Ernie Banks' 1954 season was his second season in the league, and he only hit 275, 326 on base, 427 slugging. Now, his career average is about the same, but his career on base is slightly higher, almost the same, but his career slugging is way better. So his Legends and Busts card, assuming he's in the Legends and Busts set, which I believe he would be. Yeah, Ernie Banks was in set 1. So his Legends and Busts card set 1 is going to be better, slightly better than his 1954 card would have been. But that's why he wasn't in the league, because he was a little worse than who was already in there. I don't know if there's going to be Honus Wagner, George Davis, Ernie Banks, possibly Bancroft, Pee Wee Reese, Barry Larkin. I don't know. It'll be a toss-up on whether all three of those guys will get knocked off. But the other guy on this list, who was kind of a surprise to me, Bill Dallin. I think that's how you pronounce it. Another old-time guy. Played 1891 to 1911. National League. Not in the Hall of Fame. But he's number, 11 on the shortstop list. And currently you have Jamie Rollins and Troy Tulowitzki in the league as non-Hall of Famers. But Bill Dallin's better than either one of them. The question is he in the Legends and Busts set? Either one. He is not. So, there's still going to be a couple of these players that don't make it. He would be not in the 1889 set either because he played after that. So, again, he's not a Hall of Famer. So I'm not surprised that he's not in one of the Legends and Busts sets because he's an old-time guy. He's not a Hall of Famer. So he's kind of, I hadn't even heard of him, honestly. But he's, by the Jaws metric, one of the top 15, he's number 11, top 15 shortstops of all time. So he won't make the league because he's not carded. Left field, we have Delahanty, which just got carded, I believe, and would take the place of like Ralph Kiner probably. Al Simmons was already, and Al Simmons and Goose Goslin were already in my league. They could replace Jim Rice, Minnie Minoso, maybe, possibly. Then you have Fred Clark, probably not going to make it because, again, there's only a couple of National Leaguers below him. And if Delahanty comes in, he'll replace one of those. So probably not a lot of movement in left field. Center field, the only two possibilities are Andrew Jones in the National League. But we have Jim Edmonds and Willie Davis in there now. And does Andrew Jones have a card? He does. So he was in Legends of Bust Set 1. And I believe he wasn't in the league because the only available seasons for him were not the greatest. Yeah, because there's like 2012. So there wasn't really a good card for him. I don't know. He has a very, very bad average, though, a 254 career average. So that's not going to be very great. I don't know. I'm not sure if he would be in the league or not. We'll have to see on that. And then Billy Hamilton down here, which again, he's not going to enter the league because the two National League guys are both Negro League guys, Oscar Charleston and Turkey Stearns. So they're not going to be removed from the league, and so Billy Hamilton's kind of going to be left out there. Finally, we head to right field, where we likely will see something because Paul Wainer is in here, National League. And we currently have Chuck Klein and Dave Winfield are the two worst Hall of Fame National League guys. And so Paul Wainer likely could replace one of them. And Sam Crawford, Tony Oliva, or Harold Baines could replace one of them. And finally, as a non-Hall of Fame guy who won't make the league, you have Reggie Smith down here because Shoeless Joe Jackson came in the Legends of Bust Set 1, and Dwight Evans are both in the league, and they're both higher rated than Reggie Smith. So that's kind of where we stand. I didn't do pitchers. Pitchers would be, if you've watched this far, just because you're curious about my thought process or how the league gets set up. I know some people are just curious to see how people set their leagues up. This is the thought process I go through. Very simply, as a recap, I started with the top 16 or so players based on JAWS rating. The top, since there's 3 AL and 3 NL teams, that gives you the 12 Hall of Famers. So the top 12 Hall of Famers, roughly. 6 American and 6 National brought into the league. And then the top 2 non-Hall of Famers in the AL and NL are brought into the league, roughly. And then I started with that and then saw what cards were available. And that kind of limited who I started the league with. And then I did a random draft to assign them to teams, and that's kind of how I proceeded. Then in season 2, I randomly redrafted teams, though each team kept some of the franchise or name players for the teams, if that makes sense. That's kind of how my process is. But now that there's Legends and Busts 1 and 2, this has allowed some of these players that I couldn't use before to enter the league, like Honus Wagner, Cap Anson, some of those guys. So that's kind of why I'm going through this process. Now, as a recap, if you play best of or that kind of thing, or just drafted teams, you should really pick up Legends or Busts set 1 and 2. If you want to add Negro Leaguers in there, pick up the Negro League Stars set. With those 3 sets, you'll be in great shape to do a draft league or a best of league or whatever you want to do. Does it have every Hall of Famer? No, it's not going to have every Hall of Famer. Is it going to have some of these other old time guys that weren't in the Hall of Fame but they had good stats, like Bill Dallin here or Bill Dolan? No, it's not going to have those either. But it is going to have almost all of the Hall of Famers and best players in history. Plus, it has the busts. So it has those guys that were highly touted, but then didn't pan out in the league. So it has a lot of those guys too. Legends and Bust Set 2 added top prospects that in some cases didn't even make the major leagues. They were top ranked prospects, but they never made it out of the minor leagues. So it has those guys too. And then, of course, Legends and Bust Set 2 also has the Japanese league players, the top Japanese league players. So you could add Sadaharu O and those kinds of guys in there too. And I didn't even mention that Legends and Bust Set 1 and 2 has stadiums of their own. So it has not odd, but it has non-major league or old stadiums. So the Tokyo Dome, of course, a lot of the Japanese stadiums are in set 2. But you also get some of the other sets, or some of the other stadiums, like Colt Stadium in Houston, Palace of the Fans, LA Memorial Coliseum, and then each card lists the years that stadium was in use, just like the player cards list the years that player was playing. So, highly recommend Legends and Bust Sets 1 and 2. This video is just to kind of give you a taste of my thought process and how I'm going to update my league with the addition of Legends and Bust Set 2. Hopefully some of you found that to be interesting. But we will leave it here for now. If you have any questions or comments, leave those down below in the comments. Consider subscribing. If you're really interested in this kind of video, I can do another one where I analyze the pitchers and take a look at the top pitchers. But that would be it. Because each team has 10 pitchers, so there's 80 pitchers basically that we'd be looking at there. But that's where we will leave things. Appreciate you all watching and all the support. And until next time, have a great evening.